getting back into it.
Yeah.
Shaking off the we're dusting off the cobwebs.
Dusting off the cobwebs.
Oh, shaking off the dust.
Should we tell a secret?
Wait, have we started?
I don't know. Have we?
I don't think so. Wait. You're listening to That's Pretty Dark,
The podcast where we talk about all of the entertainment that scared us as children
and still haunts us as adults. So grab your flashlight and join us as we take a frightfully nostalgic look over our shoulders
and under our beds
and in our closets.
And together we'll realize, whoa, that's pretty dark.
Pretty dark.
Should we tell a secret?
Yeah, tell us a secret, I guess. I don't know.
No, I was just going to share with the audience that some of our Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes were recorded last summer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think it's good to just mention it.
I was wondering if we were going to record a disclaimer.
Yeah, you'll hear us talking about things like being super hot, which I'm not right now. Now it's 30 degrees outside. And we have to have the heater off because of the sound. And so I'm cold at the moment. But yeah, we recorded those last summer.
I'm simultaneously cold and covered in sweat at the same time.
That sounds like an illness.
Don't know. My feet are constantly sweaty.
I thought that your sentence was going to end at, I don't know, my feet.
I don't know, my
and
feet.
I was like, well, I don't have anything for you.
That was the secret, huh?
That was the secret.
Big reveal.
Hey guys, welcome.
Oh, yeah. Hey, everybody.
I'm Kaylin, if you didn't know.
And I'm Christian, as always.
If you didn't know.
If you didn't know.
So there was, honestly, you want to know another secret?
Oh, my God.
I'm in a secret telling kind of mood right now.
Yeah, hit me with another secret.
Well, we had a schedule, right, of topics that we were going to cover. And the topic that I was supposed to prepare for this week just wasn't doing it for me. You know, it wasn't speaking to me the way that I needed it to.
Yeah, you know when you're working on something and you can't focus on it and you're just like, man, this is not right. This doesn't feel right.
That's how I felt this week.
Yeah.
So I did a pivot and did a Ross Geller pivot and instead decided to research the Pagemaster.
Yeah, you did.
And that's what I'm going to talk about today because it felt better.
We're going to master some pages.
So we're going to master some pages today.
I want to hear some more secrets, though.
Okay.
Tell me about your first period.
Well, I was in 7th grade. I had to accept an award on stage, and I knew everybody was looking and could tell, which nobody could. But
this is a true story.
That's a true story.
Oh, my God. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was a rough day to have started my period, but
so sorry.
Hey, we've talked about my bleeding before, so.
Yeah, no, it makes me think of Downtown as Fruits, the first Hey Arnold episode.
Yeah.
And, Helga's on stage, freaking out.
Actually, yeah.
Anyway. Let's talk about Pagemaster.
We seriously have already been talking to each other for an hour, and we're clearly not warm yet. We're still lukewarm, so bear with us.
No, I think we're too warm.
The Pagemaster, for me, I've always loved to get lost in stories. Fiction has always been very important to me, so it's no surprise that I loved the Pagemaster when I was a kid. I don't know if it is what inspired my love of stories. It was all kind of happening at the same time, so you could say possibly so.
Sure.
But it also gave me nightmares well into my teen years. I was also very afraid of this movie for a long time, and I don't think I watched it without closing my eyes until I was 15, truly. So it's very deep-seated for me. And I'm excited to hear Christian's perspective on it, and I'm excited to hear your perspective on it if you watched this film and enjoyed it or did not enjoy it.
Yeah, buddy.
It's a polarizing one, and a lot of the topics that we cover are very polarizing, but
yeah.
I don't know. A lot of people had qualms with how scary it was. A lot of people felt like it just was too short.
Yeah.
I don't know. So let's see how you feel.
Let's see how you guys
I'll tell you how I feel, and we'll get
I will say
into our
that
feels.
With all the remakes of all the things nowadays, because there's nothing new in Hollywood, I am kind of surprised they haven't done a really big, massive CGI version of Pagemaster. I'm glad they haven't.
I don't know how I would feel about that.
But I'm surprised it hasn't happened, because this would be one to do.
And to be honest, I have it a little bit later, but this is an original story. A lot of people claim that it was based on a book, but any book iteration of this film came about after the film.
I thought that too, and then I looked that up.
Yeah. It was completely original.
I was shocked.
I mean, it's such a good concept. We have
It's
lots
so
to discuss. We're easing you into this, but it's such a great concept.
It reads like it would have been a book for children.
It does.
Because it's so educational. The content is so informative.
It's like a PBS movie.
Yeah. It's like reference after reference after reference. You can tell the people who created it really loved literature, classic literature, maybe even a healthy serving of banned books in some instances. Because a lot of the
talk about that too.
A lot of the references and content in this movie, not to steal any of your thunder, but a lot of those stories were not for children. Those are adult stories.
No, I mean the majority of them were.
And the whole point of it is to inspire children to read.
Exactly.
And it's amazing.
We like libraries. We like books.
And
you know what's so interesting to me? And I was going to
books.
mention this as well, but I feel like there were a lot of campaigns and incentives, like programs in school. There's still like accelerated reader programs, I'm sure. Like we had those.
Ooh, yeah.
But I don't feel it pushed in the media the way that it was when we were kids for children to read.
No.
Nobody cares.
Now we're trying to discourage children from reading.
That, in part, with banned books, insanity, like absolutely insane that we're at this point in history again.
It's wild.
Not only that, but we're also, we try to encourage kids to get less screen time, but I don't hear the voice saying, read a book. That's not pushed the way that it was for us.
That's not the solution to the problem of so much screen time.
That's just what I see.
Yeah. I mean, not that I would know. My only connection to children really is my nephew.
He doesn't read yet.
And they read to him. I mostly, for any holiday or his birthdays, I usually am the book giver.
Yes. I'm the book giver too. I literally, for my best friends, I have 3 books sitting next to me that I'm giving them for their baby.
Yeah.
It's not even born yet.
When he was 1 year old, I got him like a book for 7 and up. Like, I'm just getting him like all kinds of books.
You're building his library.
Yeah, totally. It's a long-term goal.
And one day when he's older, he's going to say, my Uncle Christian gave me all of these books.
That's right.
I love that.
That's right. He's going to think I'm so cool and so weird.
He is. He might not think books are cool, though. That's the issue. That's what we're actively trying. You got to show him this movie.
Right.
but wait a while, probably.
That's the thing. This movie, all of you, either if you haven't seen it or if you haven't seen it in a long time, now's the time to watch this movie, especially with all the current book banning going on, all the controversy, all the discussion about what kids should or shouldn't read.
God. I just have one thing to say about book banning, and that is those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
Boom.
That's it.
Exactly.
If you don't have access to understand it, to learn about it, like intellectually engage with those ideas and the things that have happened and parts of our history that are not great. If you don't have access to understand that, then all you're doing is opening the door for it to happen again. You're not protecting anyone. If anything, you're actively harming the kids that you're, preventing from accessing this information.
Right.
Did you know that To Kill a Mockingbird is on that list?
Yeah, of course. Oh, yeah. I mean, Harry Potter was a banned book because it promoted magic. And I say, you know what? Who gives a shit? We need more magic in our world, right? Don't we need magic?
I wasn't allowed to read Harry Potter until I never was allowed to read Harry Potter. So I didn't read it until I was in college.
My mom didn't care, but you couldn't have it at my school because we were a Christian school.
Right.
It's bad.
Yeah, I got in trouble when I was like really young, like first grade. I got in trouble for bringing Pokemon cards to my Christian school.
Yeah. Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Which that's not on the topic of banned books, but I still am a little bit bitter about it.
It's weird, the things that we decide are bad as a culture, as a society. It's really strange. On your point earlier, you said...
those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
So it's like the world's greatest catastrophes have more to do with people being ignorant and ambivalent toward the thing happening.
Yes.
That basically just ushers in the people who have the agenda, who have the motives.
Absolutely.
And Neil Gaiman recently... tweeted, to paraphrase him, he said, there's only one kind of person that would want to ban a book like Mouse. And he's like, whatever they're calling themselves these days.
Yep.
I
saw that tweet. Yep.
Boom.
There is only one kind of person. It's like so basic to me.
It's elementary.
It's elementary. If you have that desire to, I was seeing really memes basically, but it was like people who wanted to prevent Black children from going to school with their children don't want their grandchildren to know what they were doing.
Right.
And I was like, yeah.
Yes, they don't want them to be educated on the history of them trying to keep Black children from going to their school. Yeah.
Exactly. Did you know also that our Governor Kay Ivey of Alabama, in October, she tweeted that critical race theory is permanently banned in Alabama because we're going to focus on teaching our children to read and write and not hate.
Okay.
That's a direct quote from a human being who clearly has no idea what critical race theory actually is.
Yeah, she has no idea.
It's sickening. The entire thing.
Wow.
We don't want better, I think. I mean, I do. Me personally. Christian and I do.
Our society doesn't.
As a society, especially in the American South, we don't want better.
God, it's so unfortunate. All that to say, we love books. We love reading.
We do. We always have.
I write stories. I want to write children's stories. And you know what? I'll be lucky if one of my books gets banned one day. I'll consider myself so lucky.
That would be a rite of passage for sure.
So go look up the banned book lists. They're out there. There are so many books that are still banned.
And read them or give them to your kids.
Go buy them. Go get them from your local library, because there's only good things coming from these books that are banned. They're not bad. They're educational. They're informative.
Right.
Books should not be banned. The only reason they're banned is because the people who don't want them in school libraries is because they have an agenda. They have politics or religion.
They're only banned because of someone else's opinion.
Their own personal, ideology, their own whatever, their own bullshit.
Yeah.
But as soon as they're banned, I mean, what? Book sales for Mouse is just like skyrocketing.
Yeah.
It's like a bestseller now.
Yep.
It's insane. It's like, thank God people give a shit,
Yeah.
Anyway.
I hope that people do.
So we're going to get off our soapbox here about books and everything, but
I can't promise we won't hop up on another one at some point, but
we will, because this entire movie is all about the love of reading and how literally reading books gives you the tools you need to survive this existence.
Exactly.
It gives you confidence, courage, a sense of mystery and whimsy and magic. And you get to use that to be a successful human being.
Man, I love what you just said.
The world is waiting.
Oh,
guys.
yeah. Snaps over here. That was good.
I just quoted the end of the movie, but that's how important this movie is. And I will also say, I can now confirm, Kaylin, I watched this movie when I was a kid.
Okay.
I couldn't remember.
So I've asked Christian about this movie for a couple years because
You bought me my copy.
I did. I bought him a DVD copy years ago.
Yeah.
Because I knew that he would enjoy it and he couldn't remember if he had seen it or not. And so I asked him the other day as I started to prepare for this episode.
Lost to time.
I was like,
yeah.
Have you seen it yet? Because he was going to watch it before we, recorded this episode. And he can confirm now, I guess, that he did. I can
confirm now. Yes, because there were certain pieces of the movie that really clicked, especially, like I told you, horror. The book character himself, horror. I was like, whoa, that resonates with me, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it.
Sure does.
I had forgotten this movie, and it must be because I saw it when I was so young.
Yeah.
I was so young that it just was in my subconscious and not
That's
in
wild.
the forefront.
And I mean, I was also that young, but I continued to rewatch it. That's a theme that you'll obviously have heard me say a million times, is that I just wore out the tapes that I liked.
Yeah.
However scary they might have been.
Maybe it scared me, and that's why I didn't keep watching it, but we didn't keep watching
and then maybe you couldn't remember that it scared you.
We had other movies that we would burn out the VHSs, but this wasn't, for some reason, this wasn't one of them.
What's the VHS that you remember, destroying?
It's...
Just out of curiosity.
Me, my sister, and my cousins, the VHSs that we burned out the most were The Goonies and The Mummy.
Yeah,
the 1990, 98, or 99, I
think that your Mummy was my Labyrinth.
Yeah, it could be.
I think that's really, that was the same thing. Me and my cousins, we absolutely just...
Yeah, that's one thing I've been thinking a lot about. What are the animated classics I watched over and over? And I don't really remember which specific ones that I would go just put in by myself. You have all these memories of movies that you would just watch by yourself. Yes. I don't really have that. I watched TV shows, but I don't know about VHSs.
Man, I don't know what it was.
Ooh, also, I forgot what it's called. Hold on.
Oh, no. I feel like that we've been talking for forever and we haven't even like...
I know.
Oh, yeah. For the listener, if you're following along on my health journey,
there we go.
You'll be interested to know that I've thought that my thyroid disease was returning for the past several weeks because I've been having all the symptoms. Turns out I'm just anemic. So remember how I was losing all that blood? And it finally clicked for me. And I texted Christian because all the symptoms are very similar. And I texted Christian. I was like, well, I'm anemic. That's the answer to all of my problems right now. So I'm going to take an iron supplement. And but right now I'm feeling real low energy. But it was really nice, I will say, to do the notes of the Pagemaster in this place because it feels very cozy. It feels very safe.
Yeah.
As scary as it was as a kid.
It's very frightfully nostalgic.
The way it is frightfully nostalgic, but the way that I watch this movie now, it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't hurt me the way that All Dogs hurt me. You know, there are a lot of these movies, like even Ferngully puts me in a weird headspace when I watch it.
Right.
I get sad. This did not do that to me.
It's good.
It just felt good to watch.
Yeah.
It was a rainy night, and
movie.
It was a rainy night in the movie, and it felt good to watch. So if you've been hearing me talk about these things, you're not sure if you want to watch or rewatch them. I feel like although reviewers did call this movie sad and dreary at the time.
This one?
Yeah.
No way.
They did. But I didn't find it to be...
I disagree.
Even if I did find it to be sad and dreary, it was in a comforting way and not in, an oppressive way.
Yeah.
So.
Like I told you when I was going to watch it, I was like, man, I want all the chicken lo mein. I want Chinese food so bad.
You did. Like, let me just... Because it's been storming here.
That's my, like, cozy, rainy movie night comfort food.
Right.
Just lo mein. So I was, if that tells you anything, which it doesn't, that's how cozy and comforting this movie is.
Yeah. It's a good watch.
It's a good, like, we're going to have popcorn and baked cookies kind of movie night. It's really good.
Absolutely.
But the movie I was going to say.
Oh, go ahead.
We also watched To Catch a Yeti.
I've never seen that.
Okay. We'll have to cover that. It's not like a dark movie or anything. It's not scary.
It sounds scary.
No, it's silly.
The Yeti,
it's so
the
silly.
only Yeti that I know
Starring
is on...
the late, great Meatloaf.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Meatloaf.
It's a fantastic movie.
How have I never seen that?
Little animatronic Yeti character from the 90s. You know how like they made... It was a very like... How can we make Harry and the Hendersons, but with like almost no budget? We'll do a movie about a Yeti that's about 2 feet tall. We'll go get Meatloaf. We'll
I've
do
seriously
anything.
like never heard of it. That's wild.
It's so great. It's so great. Anyways.
Okay.
Let's talk about The Pagemaster because this movie is so good.
It's so good. So now that we've been talking for 20 minutes.
Hey, for the audience, it's like 10 because I'm going to cut out most of it.
That's true. Okay, feeling better.
Don't worry.
Okay, recap. Banned books are awesome. Go read them. Banning books sucks. And The Pagemaster is an excellent, cozy watch with your kids, watch with yourself.
Watch with your dogs and your cats.
Watch with your dogs and your cats and just love the love letter to classic literature.
Oh my goodness. The number of references in this
so many.
movie
I'm going to go over a lot of them, but you can stop me
astonishing.
and correct me and, we'll make sure to call out as many as we can.
No, I chose to not make a list of references because I wouldn't have had time. I'd still be making the list of references. They went all in with classic literature.
Well, would you like to hear a fact about that as we're going to start on kind of a summary of the plot and the production and that all that good stuff?
I was hoping you'd have facts about that.
So
yes.
The fact about that is that all of the stories that are referenced in the film were public domain at the time of making the film.
Right.
Not shocking to you, not surprising to anyone, because it would be insanely difficult to get the rights to reference anything that wasn't public domain at the time.
I hear that, but I saw The Shining on a bookshelf.
You did, yes, but they didn't depict it and they didn't discuss it.
So you're talking about things that were part of the actual plot.
Yes. Anything that was part of the plot.
Okay, because so not just random book titles.
Yeah, I think that
shelves.
you could have the title on the shelf. I think I'm sure they either cleared that or, it was okay. But everything that was referenced as a plot point was public domain.
Yes, all public domain. Very old.
Which to me is really interesting because Christian and I have done a lot of our creative pursuits around older classics that are public domain.
They're free to use.
They're free to use. And not only that, but they've taught us so much already. And so we've tied in a lot of that to, the lessons that we've learned. We love the idea of adapting older classics. And so this just was right up both of our alley in terms of literature.
When you said I would love this movie, you were spot on.
I knew just every element of it I knew was Christian.
Thank
I've been watching it my whole life. So for years, so thank God for this podcast. Thank you for listening to That's Pretty Dark, because you've given me finally a reason to force him to watch this movie and confirm for me that he does in fact enjoy it. Because I knew that he would.
I did start watching it one day, I think during COVID, and I stopped it about 10 minutes in or less because it was like, during the summer, it was hot.
The vibes
the
weren't
sun
right.
was shining so bright. You know, cicadas are buzzing everywhere. And I was like, this is not the right vibe for this movie.
You needed to wait.
I put it back on its own shelf in my living room and said, the time will come for this, but it's not today.
Come it did.
Come it did twice. I did. I watched it twice. That's what I'm saying.
You did. You watched in the past like 24 hours. The Pagemaster released theatrically on November 23rd, 1994. It was rated G, and it took the world by storm as one of the first films to ever feature live-action, traditional, hand-drawn animation, and CGI animation all together.
It should have been at least PG. I'm going to say that much.
Well, that's true. It also didn't exactly take the world by storm. But for me, it took me by storm and a generation of kids that were just beginning to watch films at that time. I think it was one of the coolest things we'd ever seen.
It's a really cool movie.
It's cool. The elements that are incorporated.
Yeah.
Like we've been saying for the entire introduction to this podcast, it emphasized the importance of reading in libraries. What's better than that? You know, it's Wishbone, but it's a movie, that kind of thing. Those were the things that we grew up on. Mm-hmm. It was so of its time in that way.
And worshipping librarians, essentially.
I know. Yeah. Librarians were held to this like regal status.
They're amazing.
I still think that way about librarians. Shout out to you if you're a librarian.
If you're a librarian or if you know one.
I know I have friends that work at libraries. Like,
yeah.
Hats off. Seriously.
Watching this movie made me think, because I'm kind of reconsidering a lot of my like occupational, my decisions lately. And I've been toying with the idea of working in a bookstore for like more than a decade.
Yeah.
I could actually work as a librarian.
You have to have degrees for it. I mean, you have an English degree, so you probably could get there.
I mean, no, you have to be like qualified, which is also cool. You have to be qualified to be a librarian, guys.
Oh, dude, you have to be so educated, but also there are so many jobs that you can do as a librarian. Like there are legal librarians that do research for legal cases. Ooh. There's just so many applications that you never like. I get on this soapbox. Here we go. Ready for me to step up on my second soapbox of the podcast? Ooh. The things that they tell you that you can do when you're in school, it's like policeman, nurse, teacher.
Yeah.
Like they're these like arbitrary basic things. And you never really get a chance before you're 18, before you're making those career decisions. You never really get a chance to hear about all the other random ass jobs that there are in the world.
Yep.
The jobs that actually make the world go round. You know, you're not made familiar with those things. And so you think of a librarian and you're like, do you just file books all day? No, they do so much more than that. But you would never know that when you're choosing your career path. So do your research. You know, like this is me speaking to teens, which I don't think there are any teenagers.
Hey, all you Gen Zers and,
but if you're
and younger.
Or if you're older and you're looking for a new career, don't take it for granted that these are the things that are available to you. Because there are so many careers that I would have pursued had I known they existed.
Yeah.
I don't even know why that's on, but it's trying to restart my computer, so I told it not to.
Don't do that. Cancel.
Would you like to hear a summary of the plot of The Pagemaster?
I would love nothing more.
Was I that slow when I was speaking? Oh, God. Okay.
That's just what I say every time you ask me, so I'm just going to keep doing it.
And I think you should.
I would love nothing more.
So the film follows the story of uber-anxious 10-year-old Richard Tyler, who's played by Macaulay Culkin. And he's sent to buy a bag of nails for the treehouse that him and his father are building together.
That's a bit presumptuous.
Well, his father is building for him.
His father's building for him, and he doesn't even want
That's true. Yeah, he's trying to get over some...
Have you seen this movie?
I've seen it once or twice.
Are you pulling this quote from another person's blog?
No, I actually wrote this summary, believe it or not. I like the end better than the beginning, though. You want to hang in for the ride?
I guess I'll hear the end of the summary.
Okay. So on the way to buy these nails for the treehouse that his father's building for him,
thank you.
He runs into a group of bullies and an electrical storm, and he seeks shelter within the walls of a beautiful, ornate library. Sign me up, honestly.
I mean...
A slip?
Yeah.
And maybe also a magical librarian send him into the depths of the stories that surround him, and he must traverse the landscapes of horror, adventure, and fantasy with the help of their matching storybooks, and complete the tests found therein to find his way back to that glowing neon exit sign.
Oh my God.
Mm.
So when I finish the book, can you write the like back summary?
I will.
That goes on
I'd be quoted.
No.
You want me to actually write the synopsis?
Write the
They
actual
don't even
synopsis.
put synopsises on books anymore.
No, they
Depressing,
need to.
But true.
They need to.
I'll write your synopsis if you write a novel.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sweet.
It's recorded for posterity.
God, that library is beautiful though, right?
It's so beautiful. So The Pagemaster was produced and animated over 3 years by Turner Pictures and Hanna-Barbera, which honestly, that surprised me. I knew that, but I didn't know that, if you know what I mean. Like, I'd heard it, but I didn't internalize it. And Hanna-Barbera obviously is responsible for so many cartoons from the 70s onward. Pretty much every cartoon my dad likes is a Hanna-Barbera cartoon.
Yeah.
And it was released by 20th Century Fox, which is why Disney owns it today.
Okay. Yeah, that was a confusing thing on the Google.
Yes, because Disney has released the DVDs and like several other home video iterations of it in more recent years because 20th Century Fox distributed it and they own the rights to distribute now, I think.
They own everything.
Yeah, they've swallowed it all up. So the production and animation teams, there were many industry standouts on these teams. Most notably probably is David Krishner. Do you know that name?
I know the name.
Yes. So he was the EP and the writer and creator behind Don Bluth's An American Tale.
Okay.
But he also produced and executive produced. It was varied. Like you can look at his his IMDb or his Wikipedia and it will tell you, but he produced and executive produced or wrote or created, usually not all three. But he did one or the other on so many titles, including all the Child's Play movies, The Addams Family, Once Upon a Forest, which emphasize that. We'll get to that one day. Hocus
That's
Pocus.
Like what I want to do.
I
how do I become this Krishner character?
Just you wait.
How do I do that?
Just you wait. Hocus Pocus.
Oh.
The Flintstones movie, Cats Don't Dance. That was his other big one, which I love. The Bride of Chucky and more. And he also created the Chucky dolls for all the iterations of the Chucky films.
Amazing.
Yes. And so David Krishner is also slated to be the EP on the upcoming Hocus Pocus 2.
Very cool.
So he's still involved in that saga. Phoebe's yelling. She says hello.
Hey, Phoebes.
There were also many animators on this film that were borrowed from like the contemporary Disney hits at the time, like Little Mermaid and Aladdin. Both of those are referenced in this movie. And animators who did work with Don Bluth on An American Tale. So
I was going to say...
it's a similar vibe.
We may get into more of the animation. I don't know. But I was going to say the animation... Specifically, the color reminded me of All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Absolutely.
Because it had the same, I was wondering, I was like, man, this is the same kind of weird washed out.
It's a
very pastel.
It's a dullness.
The backgrounds, especially the library, once the library itself becomes animated, it's very stark, very, very colorful, very hard lines. But the characters themselves against such a stark, contrasty background were very washed out.
Yeah.
Faint.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once they get into the mystery of the horror versus adventure versus fantasy, all of that becomes very dusty, very foggy.
Dusty is a good word, yeah.
It's weird.
It
loses its tangibility.
I don't know. That was just kind of the way it was done at the time, and that was what people leaned into. It's so nostalgic for me now seeing it, but now I also don't know why they would make those choices.
Yeah.
It was hand drawn, a lot of it too. So that's probably, that's part of it. And then with this film, you have to consider that they're also incorporating, granted, the majority of the film is animated, hand drawn animation.
Yeah.
Millions of drawings, they say, over 3 years.
Yeah.
At the same time, there are elements where they're having to combine CGI and live action. And so maybe those considerations also change the way that they would draw backgrounds and things like that.
I'm curious to know what was CGI.
There's really not that much, but it was important for the time and for the plot. But to go back to our friend David Krishner, I don't mean to speak ill. However, there was a little bit of drama about the screenplay. As they were getting ready to release the film, David Krishner actually tried to take credit for the screenplay. Oh. And it was an original screenplay, so no books based on it, no nothing. It was an original story from this guy, David Cassie. And he had only written like some like not even B movie. He'd written some like R-rated horror movies before this. And then he wrote this screenplay. And Kushner tried to take credit for writing the screenplay. I'm not a big fan of how it went down based on what I've read. I've never spoken to these people, so if they would like to come and talk to us, I would be more than happy to discuss it.
Exclusive
but from what I have read on the internet,
yeah,
it seemed like Kushner was kind of using some WGA loopholes because it had been written by Cassie under a WGA, which is the Writers Guild of America. It had been written under contract, and Kushner tried to argue that because it was an animated film, the Writers Guild didn't have jurisdiction over it, basically.
Weird.
And so there ended up being this whole like investigation about what they were and weren't allowed to preside over or, make claims over.
Yeah.
But Cassie was represented by the WGA and he won the settlement. And so he ended up getting writing credit. And it was determined based on that investigation that it went into interviews with people who had been involved in like the genesis of the project and how it came to be. And Kushner wasn't awarded any writing credits at all.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Nope. Well, it went to the person who apparently wrote it.
Actually created it.
I also thought it was funny because several things on the internet mention how this movie tried to kind of ride Don Bluth's coattails because he was so successful at the time. And obviously Kushner had worked with him on An American Tail. And so a lot of the advertisements for this movie say things like from the creators of An American Tail and stuff. And it's true. It's not that it's not factual, but it seems like they wanted the audiences at the time to think that it was a Don Bluth movie, when in reality it was not a Don Bluth movie.
Right.
It's close enough, to be honest.
You see that now from the producers of Stranger Things, this new movie, and you're like, but that has nothing to do with those guys. It's just the other people.
Right. It's some other producers.
It's some guy who, anyway, but like, it still happens.
And it's marketing.
It's all marketing.
Yeah. So Pagemaster was directed, it was co-directed. So there was one director for the live action portion and there was one director for the animated portion.
Okay.
So the live action director was Joe Johnston. And there are two names for the animation director found online. It's either Pixote, he's French, or Maurice. So I think he has a French name and then he'll go by his Americanized French name of Maurice probably.
Okay.
But he was the animation director. So both of them have racked up really interesting credits that kind of paint a picture of the type of director that they were. And honestly, I loved all the things that they both made. Yeah. So they all kind of they've all lived in the same family in my mind for a long time. Even me as a kid not knowing they were the same director. So Joe Johnston also will say he doesn't actually count the Pagemaster in his filmography personally, apparently, because there was also some feelings hurt. Like apparently some scenes were edited without his consent or permission at a certain point, and he decided that it wasn't what he directed it to be. And so he doesn't consider it, or at least at the time of writing of the article that I read, he didn't consider it part of his filmography, which is kind of sad because it was so formative to so many of us that are now becoming adults and whatever. But
right.
So Joe Johnston, he was responsible for directing a lot of other effects-driven films from the time, including Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which was his directorial debut in 1989.
Wow.
This was just before Pagemaster. Then he did Pagemaster, and then he did Jumanji in 1995.
No way, Jumanji?
Yeah.
We plan to do Jumanji one day.
Yeah. I mean, talk about a dark movie.
That's a dark movie. That's one that we wore out.
Oh,
you were
Jumanji.
asking about VHSs? We watched Jumanji over and over and over and
Joe
over.
Johnston. And so Pixote, or Maurice, like I said, he was French, and he worked as an animator on The Black Cauldron in 1985. Yeah. The Rescuers Down Under. He was art director on The Rescuers Down Under in 1990. Okay. And he also directed the Symphony No. 5 number in Fantasia 2000.
Ooh, I'm going to reference Fantasia in this episode.
I mean, Fantasia talk about a dark movie. So, but this dude, I can see his fingerprint on it. You know what I mean?
It makes sense.
Yeah, even as a kid, I could see it.
I didn't watch The Black Cauldron until I was an adult either. Ooh. And I can't wait to cover that movie.
Many people, when I've talked about this podcast, they immediately say, have you talked about The Black Cauldron?
We're going to.
Obviously, he had a penchant for the darkness.
And it's cool that he was just I do animated things.
Yeah, I do animated things. And he directed the animation. I think that's really cool. And he worked really closely, obviously, with Kushner and all of the production team to make it work. He is featured pretty heavily There's like the making of the Pagemaster. There's like a short that Christopher Lloyd like hosted, and it was like on the DVD and everything. But you can find it on YouTube now. I think I mention it later too, but they show a lot of like interviews with Maurice, which is I think really cool, and they go through a lot of the process of drawing, coloring, like all that stuff. So highly recommend checking that out in addition to this.
I will watch that. Yeah.
But what I was going to say is that all these films kind of resonated with me at the time. They were offbeat and dark, and it's not really a surprise to look back and find that all the same people had a hand in bringing them to life. Mm-hmm. And that's a theme that we are finding more and more with this podcast, is really when we dig in and learn about what made 90s children's entertainment dark, is that we uncover all this talent, these people that were in their 20s and 30s. It's a lot of the same people, and they had been influenced by decades of watching, Gunsmoke and Rocky and Bullwinkle and
other very dark things.
Yeah. Andy Griffith, like the moral, just all of these ideas clearly were like distilled into their minds and then echoed back to us. And we're doing the same thing.
It's all boiling together in a very black cauldron.
Oh, yes. Yes. We are mixing it up in the cauldron. And I see it so much more clearly after researching so many of these films and seeing that the connections are all there. It's
becoming very clear. And I love that aspect of this podcast because I wouldn't know this otherwise.
Yeah. And I don't know, just the humanity of it. It makes so much sense to me. Like knowing that these actual people had such direct impact on what we consumed and why it was the way it was. Mm-hmm. I don't know, it somehow helps. It helps me cope with it.
It's like following that trail of breadcrumbs, It's like seeing the origins of something is always really, I don't know, weirdly reaffirming.
Right.
It makes you feel like you have an origin. And the things that made you were grounded in something.
Yes. And anything that I make going forward, people can look back in the same way, and it reflects on the people.
They'll talk about the entertainment that we consumed as children, right? It's amazing.
That's so cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah. They'll talk about what made us the way we were, or, the other creators of our time. And I do think that's really cool. And speaking of those imprints and echoes, I have to also mention that the film was composed by the late James Horner.
Okay. I love the music in this movie.
It is so good. It's so good. He worked closely with Kushner a lot and James Cameron. And so his resume, like we all know it, we all love it. Land Before Time, Captain EO, American Tail, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Once Upon a Forest, We're Back, Braveheart, Casper, Apollo 13, Jumanji, Balto, Titanic, Mighty Joe Young, the 2000 version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Avatar, the 2010 Karate Kid, and just like so many others are James Horner. Like,
wow.
Yeah, he's done.
What a resume.
He has scored so much of our childhood. And unfortunately, he passed away, I think, in like 2015.
We all gotta die.
So, please rest easy, James. We appreciate your legacy. And in addition to the production, I also want to talk about, obviously, the cast. So we have Macaulay Culkin, who was...
Who's that?
Yeah, who could that be? He was catapulted into fame after he starred in Home Alone, the whole franchise. And he was one of the most famous child actors in the business in the 90s. He did Richie Rich and My Girl.
One of the most of all time, honestly.
Yeah, but it's so funny because when you look at his resume, not that he hasn't done a lot, because he's done quite a lot.
But it's very small comparatively.
Right, and I honestly think he's almost racked up more appearances, like appearing as himself, than roles that he's played, because he became so famous as a person.
He was just in such successful movies, and he was so charismatic as a child. People couldn't get enough of him.
And he has lived a life that most of us couldn't even fathom.
He's very cool.
Yeah, and he seems like a cool human being that's just like come out on the other side and exists as a person. But I will say, if you don't know it, I'm sure most people know it by now, like the internet knows it, but he recently had a baby with, and got engaged to, Brenda Song.
Nice.
And I know Brenda Song, obviously, from her Disney Channel infamy. Like, she was London Tipton in The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. She played in several Disney Channel original movies. Like, she's done a lot of stuff herself. But a lot of people can't really, like, picturing them together it's just like two different worlds colliding kind of, but they're together and they seem to be happy. So I'm happy for them. I hope that he is living the life because he deserves it. So he just had a baby.
He's doing much better than he used to be doing.
Congrats on that for sure.
And I missed the show, but he traveled through our city with his the Velvet Underground cover band, the Pizza Underground.
Did he?
Did you hear about that?
No.
So he's in a band called the Pizza Underground, and they're just a Velvet Underground cover band, but they changed the lyrics to be about pizza.
Pizza.
And they came through. Yeah, I didn't go because I don't know why I didn't go, but
I didn't know it happened.
So funny.
The legendary Christopher Lloyd, just like I had a whole big breath in my lungs and I had to let go. Christopher Lloyd has represented so much of my childhood and life. He plays the librarian, Mr. Dewey, like the Dewey Decimal System.
Yes.
And he also is the voice of the Pagemaster character. And obviously we know him from Back to the Future royalty. Yes. But he's been a figure that I've known my entire life, based mostly on these two roles.
Also Uncle Fester.
Oh, yeah, Uncle Fester, true. He represents this intersection for me of fiction and reality. Like, he's this scientific, bookish, like reality-driven character that is like just grounded enough and just magical enough to kind of make you believe that the impossible is possible. He sits on this line in a way that really very few other people do for me.
You're right. You're right.
And I love that. He was also in Taxi, Clue, Baby Geniuses, which is a little known movie that my sister and I watched the heck out of. He's a voice in Over the Garden Wall, which is a popular animated series.
Yeah.
And he acted as a professor in this British show that I loved when I was in high school. It's called I Dream, and it was about like a arts school where kids were going to like learn music and stuff. And it starred all of the members of the S Club 8, which was S Club 7, but S Club Juniors that morphed into S Club 8. And I loved S Club 8 so much. I wanted to be their best friend. I knew everything about them. And I thought they were so cool. And when I was in high school, they were on this series that was, a British show. And so I would like download it off the internet and Christopher Lloyd was in it. And it was such a pleasant surprise to see somebody so familiar to me, in that space too. So he's just amazing. I have nothing bad to say about that man. Also lending their voice talents to this movie, we have Whoopi Goldberg, and she just got off, finished voicing Shinzi in The Lion King, which I love. Sir Patrick Stewart, Leonard Nimoy, and Frank Welker.
Man.
So Whoopi got her start on stage in 1983, and she did a one-woman show called Spook Show, and that transferred to Broadway under the title Whoopi Goldberg, and that ran from 1984 to 1985, which I always knew she got her start in comedy and stage comedy, but I didn't know the specifics. So from there, she starred in The Color Purple and continued winning awards basically left and right for everything that she did. And she was Oda Mae Brown in Ghost, which I also love, Sister Act, Captain Planet, Star Trek The Next Generation, and just so many more roles. And if you don't know this, she did change her name. And she chose her name Whoopi after a whoopee cushion, because apparently she was gassy. So that is literally what happened.
What?
Yes.
Man, the 90s and the 80s were so weird.
They were so weird. And it was like a joke between her and her mom, I guess. And her mom didn't necessarily want that to be her name, but she liked it. And so that became her name.
That's so funny.
And she's also one of only 16 entertainers to achieve the EGOT status, which is incredible. That's, if you don't know, Emmy, Grammy, Oscar, Tony. She has one of each.
Yeah, she's one of those people that lives in, celebrity fame that you feel like always existed.
Yes.
Or you feel like they were a staple of our universe or our existence.
Yes.
I've never really even wondered how she got started.
Me neither. It's just, she just was there. That's our generation, though. That's us, as millennials. She was just there. And that she was a fixture.
She was already famous before we were able to recognize Whoopi Goldberg.
Yes.
She was
already
already
a fixture
famous.
there.
Yeah.
Which I kind of love. I really do. I felt as if in my life I was like, she's underrated. No, she has an EGOT. Like people know how brilliant she is.
Mm-hmm.
I just, she's such a fixture for me that I have taken her for granted, I think.
Right.
And then the voices of my childhood, right? She's Shenzi. She's Fantasy. Yes. She's these characters that were so close to me.
Oh, she was in everything I watched. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then Sir Patrick Stewart plays Adventure, the storybook, and he's best known for portraying Picard in Star Trek The Next Generation. And he has also portrayed at various points the character of Ebenezer Scrooge, Captain Ahab, and he's also had like a successful voice acting career, like credits all over the map, including Family Guy and American Dad. Like he's done so much. Of
course.
And I didn't know why or when or how, but he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth in 2010 for his services to drama.
Wow.
So that's why he is Sir Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart.
Good for him, I guess. I don't think I'll ever be knighted or, whatever.
You and me both.
Whatever.
I think you have to be English, but sure.
You have to be. You do, yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm English in pretty much every...
my heritage is
every
English.
Every strand of my DNA, but...
Yeah, both of us.
I hail from Greater London.
We're quite American,
yes,
unfortunately.
But we are quite American, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We also have Leonard Nimoy, who voices Dr. Jekyll, and he was famous for his portrayal of Spock in the Star Trek franchise for almost 50 years.
Yes.
And after his death in 2015, they actually named an asteroid after him, which I don't know, something about that's so nice to me that he devoted his life to Star Trek and then he had an asteroid named after him. And also, there's just a stupid amount of Star Trek connections in this film. Like, pretty much everybody in this movie has been involved with Star Trek to some degree. And I'm not a Star Trek person. And again, I apologize for that, but I'm not. So I'm not going to speak on it. I'm just going to keep moving.
I've seen a lot of it, but I'm not a Star Trek person per se.
Yeah. So I don't want to...
Yeah.
I don't want to under or overemphasize that fact, but it is a true fact. Everybody in this movie pretty much has been involved in Star Trek.
As opposed to false facts.
As opposed to false facts. So that brings us to Frank Welker, who plays the horror book. And
he's done a lot of stuff too.
Like he has one of the most extensive lists of credits that I have ever seen in my life, my millennial life of IMDb Googling.
To be not famous.
I know.
He's done a lot of stuff.
Like you may not know his name, but holy shit, like he has done so much. He was the voice of Freddy in the original Scooby-Doo series, Big Time Beagle in DuckTales. He did all of the lion roars, the laughing hyenas, and the wildebeest noises for The Lion King.
Boom.
He did the reindeer sounds for the Santa Claus. He has done so many minor characters and animals in like dozens and dozens of shows, films, and video games.
This guy is an incredible voice actor.
He's everywhere. If you can remember like a distinct animal sound from your childhood watching movies, it was probably Frank Welker. Like it's unreal what he's done.
You think, how did they get those animal sounds for all these different things? How did they record an animal doing that sound?
They didn't.
It's probably just a human being.
It's a person. I think he voiced Abu, like the Abu from Aladdin, in several different Aladdin
He did have some Aladdin credits. Yeah.
He's done so much. So thanks, Frank Welker, for just making our childhood sound the way that it sounded, because there were 3 decades. 3 decades of his voice. So, and he did such a good job as horror. Like you said, it resonated with you to the point where you didn't remember if you had seen this film.
Right.
And then it clicked for you when you saw and heard horror.
Yes.
His portrayal of horror was very distinct.
Very.
And his voice as horror was very distinct.
Like,
and I know that's true for me.
To the point where I feel I had something that was the horror book. I don't know if it was like a plushie.
Like a toy.
Thing.
That's
or
great.
If I just remembered the movie so viscerally that
you
I
felt like
felt like I had one.
Held him.
But something about him, his colorization, the colors
he's like
of
this
that
turquoise
book.
color.
The greenish, bluish, haunted, ghostly color. I need that. I need that book in my life.
I know. That was us. Like it imprinted on us in a very distinct way.
God, I love it so much.
But Unfortunately, despite the fact that the concept and the story were totally stellar and they had a killer cast and crew and they had this unique production scheme gimmick of all of the animation and CGI, the film was still a technical like flop at the box office.
Yeah.
It only made $13.7 million from a budget. I saw everything from like 27 million to over 30 million.
Yeah.
It didn't make what they needed it to. Yeah. But in my opinion, we should cut them some slack for that because they were pioneering this technology. Like they were some of the first people to do it. And obviously that was going to cost money. So it's like, you know, you have to spend money to make money, but also you have to spend money to like be avant-garde kind of in your field.
Right.
And that's what they did. And it did do much better in home video sales. I couldn't find statistics for that. I looked all over the place. But it did, again, like many of these movies that we're covering, just had this like cult following with home video.
Yeah.
And I found an article from the Washington Post that was published in December of 1994 that was really interesting to read because they compared and contrasted like what was happening with these studios at the time. They even interviewed, like they had quotes from David Kushner and different studios that were kind of going up to compete against Disney. The article was explaining how Disney can do this for a living. They can afford to mess up. They have their parks. They have their savvy marketing. They can create more buzz through that. And if they don't land, it doesn't hurt them as badly as it hurts like a smaller studio.
Right.
And that's true, obviously. It makes sense. But it was interesting to kind of step into that, like a newspaper from December 1994. I wasn't reading the news. I was 2 years old. And so it's like hearing about how it went down. And Disney basically directly undermined the Pagemaster's box office numbers because they had released Lion King in like the early spring, summer of that same year. And they brought it back to theaters for Thanksgiving, which is around the same time that this like debuted theatrically.
So they just re-released a movie at the same time?
They brought it back to theaters. Yes.
Clearly successful animated movie was going to come out?
Yes. They did.
Wow.
But for also the holiday season, they were just making their money. You know, like they could do that. But it's unfortunate because it came out at the same time as Pagemaster and I think The Swan Princess. And so Lion King, like the article phrased it like Simba gobbled up all of their profits. Like
everything
Simba did
the
it
light
again.
touches.
Everything the light touches, Simba took over. Which I can't complain. Lion King is my favorite Disney movie. I'll go on record here as saying that. It's my favorite.
It is one of the greatest animated films of all time. Sure.
It definitely
sure.
It didn't help the Pagemaster situation at the time. And like I said, I couldn't find the stats for the home video, but it, you know, it's such a good movie that it's unfortunate that sometimes the success of a project or the success of a thing is defined by things like that were totally out of the control of the team that was making it.
Like I said before, there were only so many projects being created, you know, any given year, because it wasn't like now. Now it's oversaturated everything all the time. There's a movie every week coming out now. But at the time, there were only so many movies per year coming out. And it's so unfortunate that like of all the opportunities, of all the weekends, of all the days they could have released a movie every time. I feel like every time we've covered these lower, not lower budget, but like lesser production animated movies, it's like Disney also releases a movie the same weekend. Like with All Dogs, it was what, Little Mermaid?
Yes.
It's like every time there's another release. I mean, but that's like McDonald's opens up on one corner, across the street there's a Burger King.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. Like that's a standard of just like capitalism and competition, and
it's just competition. They wait to see.
Yeah. Disney would lose out if they didn't. You know what I mean? Like it's they had the resources, so they did the thing. So it's like I can't I don't know. It's like give the little guys a chance. You know, I'm always like I'm always inclined to root for the underdog, but I also love Disney. Yeah, I do. I love what they've been able to do, but it is kind of wild the monopoly that they've had for so long. You know, it's and now probably now in our adult lives they have more of a monopoly than they even did when we were kids. You know, they've bought up all of these other smaller groups. They own Star Wars now, like they own
ESPN. I mean, they own everything.
Yeah. All that being said, there were these smaller productions that I think still do live on. Like I said, it's hard to quantify because you're looking at the box office numbers, and it sucks to me that's that's the definition of success for film. I mean, it is point blank. But what that can't quantify is that this movie has lived in my head. I'm 30 years old this year. Me as a person, this was formative to me, and I'm not the only one that feels that way. So there's no way to quantify the impact that it actually had.
Yes, it's lived for 25 years in your mind.
You know, yeah, exactly. And it continues to influence how I interact, how I create things. Like the impact of a movie, the impact of something like that you consume as a child culturally, it can't be quantified by box office sales.
Right.
And I hope that nothing that I make is defined by how much money it makes. And I've always felt that way. You and I have talked about that a lot. Like, I don't care if things that I make ever make money because of how they impacted me and the other people that worked on them. Like, that's what it was about to me, was the human aspect of it.
Yep.
And I think a lot of these smaller studios kind of had that. You have to have that mindset if you want to feel fulfilled in what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think these people really cared about, and they were passionate about the work they were doing. You have to be to create millions of drawings over 3 years, to spend 3 years on a film. You know, you have to be passionate about it.
And the amount of detail that went into the plot points.
Yeah, just everything. They went above and beyond.
Yeah.
So, are you ready to dive into the plot?
Absolutely.
Of the Pagemaster? This is the moment you've all been waiting for.
I'm so ready.
I would say drum roll, but I don't think you need any more further ado.
No, we've been building up for a while.
So I do have to tell you that those opening credits are so nostalgic for me. Like,
they're so good.
So during the opening credits, Richie's in his bedroom. This is Richard Tyler, that played by Macaulay Culkin. And we see him in his bedroom, and he has a flashlight, and he's afraid of the thunderstorm that's like raging outside his window. And I just think of how many times I've been that kid.
I was going to say,
I've been that
earlier,
kid.
I failed to mention that you are the main character of this movie. You are Richard Tyler.
I am.
There's a reason why you love this movie, I feel like. It's because he epitomized this anxiety inside of you. This constant, like, danger assessment.
But what's kind of hilarious is that, granted, not when I was a kid, but like since I've been older and watched this movie, and a reason I've always wanted you to watch this movie is because I think Richard Tyler is you.
Me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
No, I see you as him. Like, you talk about you as a kid. You talk about when you were a kid, you were anxious, you were all these things, you were afraid. And not now. I don't see you now as him. I'm closer to him now than you are. But I do think that when you were a kid, like the stories that you tell me of childhood, I picture somebody like Richard Tyler.
That's so funny.
I've always
I don't
seen
know that. I definitely didn't, because he has these like statistics and this data.
That's true.
About
and I am that.
Things
That's
like percentages of danger.
Right.
Yep. I never had that.
Yeah. I have that. So I'll just go into this because it is me. It is, am I him? Is he me?
That's who you are now, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like right up front in his bedroom, we see a fire extinguisher with the break in case of fire, like behind glass. And then we have boots right next to that with a note.
In case of glass.
That say, used in case of broken glass. Like that.
And there's like danger, high voltage next to the light switch.
Yeah. I mean.
Or the outlet or whatever.
That is a caricature of me.
Yeah.
Of us. But me.
If I was going to draw you in a comic strip, there would be those things in your house.
Because I'm aware. I'm so acutely aware of everything that can go wrong. Do you know, like you don't understand what it's like. I mean, you do, but the general human
I do.
Probably doesn't understand what it's like to be constantly calculating every way that the current situation could go wrong. And so I have always done that. And to see it represented, I felt very seen by this movie. I think I've mentioned it before as we've discussed fear on this podcast, but from the age of like 5 years old, I kept a literal bag packed by my door in case there was a fire.
Yes, you did.
And that's a very dark thought now as an adult to look back on. But at the time, it seemed like the most logical thing I could do because I can't prevent a fire. I can only control what happens if there is one.
Right.
And do you know what's crazy is that in the past...
More than that?
Yes. In the past couple months, I've seen that on TikTok.
Of all places.
I'm not the only one that did this. People on TikTok are talking about having done this as a child.
Really?
I've never in my life heard of anybody else doing it. I've been the only one that I've known in person.
Yeah, you found your people.
But I found TikTok, apparently in the algorithm, have shown me my people.
Wow.
Not the only one.
Pretty cool.
Like, most people associate childhood with being carefree, and I
don't.
totally missed the boat on that one. We missed the boat on that one.
Yeah.
And it begs the question again, like, I was watching this movie when I was so young. Did this get into my head? Was I already doing that? I mean, I know many other reasons why I was anxious, religious trauma, but beyond that, I latched onto this so tightly, and I don't know which was what. I don't know if it just made me feel seen, or if, there's just lots of ways that you can kind of slice that up in your psyche.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we do know is that fear is eternal and transcendent. And whether these adults that were making these films were making them for the children that they knew, who were more careful than they had been in the 70s and 80s and when they were growing up, or if they were making them for their children's generation, they wanted to be more careful, or their own inner children somehow that were afraid.
Right.
We don't know.
It's always that love letter to the child inside of them.
Exactly. Parenting your inner child. I talk about that a lot with people that I know. Just going back and like giving your inner child what they couldn't have.
What do I wish I'd known as
maybe it's kind of that. Maybe it's people reflecting on their childhood.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I do know that in this movie, so his parents start talking about like, what should they do? And it's really funny because his dad is talking to his mom, obviously, and his dad's like, he's afraid of tuna fish. And then his mom's like, no, he's afraid of the mercury levels in the tuna. Like,
yes.
It's just, that's me.
That made me think of you.
That is me, 100%. And then they talk about like how he brought up like a medical journal when they were discussing something.
Yes.
The number of times in the last 2 months that I've referenced a medical journal or brought up a medical journal, so many times. The number of times in my life that I've done that, very frequently.
Yeah.
But I felt like I've been getting better with my health anxiety, and then all of these terrible things happened to me with my health. So it never like, I never
just
escaped it.
in the last few months, yeah.
In the last few months, it just has always come back. But it made sense to me as a 10-year-old. That's probably how I was. That's how I am today. I know a lot of things. I have a lot of facts. I'm sorry. I have too much information to ever be relaxed, ever. Like, that's just how it is for me.
And so you go that route. I go the overhearing your parents' conversation about you route.
Wow.
It's weird to overhear a conversation about yourself.
Sure. And I'm sure I did, but I was probably agreeing. I was probably like, please fix this. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Somebody, somehow.
Sure.
But yeah, so they're eventually working on this treehouse, and Richard Tyler is reciting statistics about household injuries involving ladders and, trees. And I feel very understood. And his dad is telling him that he can't live life based off of statistics after falling from said treehouse. Granted, it's a little bit of Richie's fault, but he falls out of the treehouse. But he tells Richie that he can't live his life based on statistics. And I'm over here. Both child Kaylin, who watched this movie, and adult Kaylin, who watched this movie, are over here like, do you want to bet? Like, I'll survive longer than you will. Hey, risk averse, still very badass. We're over here. Like, we exist.
He's the one who did fall from the treehouse.
Right? I mean, it was, like I said, it was a little bit of
it's both their fault. I mean, it was kind of one of those, like, 90s gimmicks where
it's a slapstick moment.
It's a slapstick, like, that wouldn't happen, but...
Right.
Okay, I'll give it to you because it's 94.
Yeah, pretty much. They got a lot of leeway back in those days.
I was 3. I'll give it to you. I was dumb at that
what
age
did
too.
I know?
Sure.
I was like sucking my thumb or some shit, so I don't know.
We were all stupid in 94.
Sure were. So everything about this movie gets started when his dad sends him, like I said before, on his super tricked out safety bike in his safety helmet and vest.
With his siren.
To buy a pound of nails for the treehouse. And of course, on this journey, he runs into some bullying kids, which no 90s movie would be complete without bullying kids. One of these kids is, I assume, Krishner's daughter, Alexis.
Yeah, her? Okay.
Because he's a producer, and I think that was his kid. She's credited. But these kids chicken cluck him. There's the chicken clucking.
God.
Again. Into taking a different route than he probably would, I guess, to the hardware store because they've got this ramp set up and they're kind of being daredevils, and he, bails.
My favorite part of that was like, where you going, the moon?
Yeah, because he's wearing like this crazy getup, so it's They're calling him an astronaut, basically, because he's, like, suited up for safety.
The way he says that, I'm just like, dude.
Where are you going? The moon? I remember that as a kid. But this results, inexplicably, in him basically biking down, like, a highway. It looks like an interstate.
Yeah.
But conditions are deteriorating. There's limbs falling.
The storm clouds are blowing in.
The rain is here.
Yeah, the rain's coming.
This darkness, that storm brewing energy, like, I think it happened in multiple films, but, like, I absorbed that as a kid. Like, I remember making up games when I was playing house, or, like, when I was playing imaginary games, there was always a storm coming. And I was always trying to get in out of the rain, or, be safe or protect.
Because it always redirects the current, like, intention of the character.
It's an inciting thing.
I totally get that. We always had storms, and we had a game called The Wind Gods.
Okay.
Me and my sister and our friends. I mean,
way more creative.
Oh, man. They were always after us, those wind gods.
We used to play teenagers, so much less creative, where we pretended this was the game. Me, my sister, my neighbor, Paige.
What's up, Paige?
Shout out to Paige, because she did all the, like, crazy childhood stuff with us. Yeah. But we would play a game called Teenagers, where, like, we played it in the garage, so it was like one of us lived there, and then the others would, like, come over to visit. I don't know why we thought we lived on our own when we were teenagers.
No, we had that too. We had the same thing. Yeah.
And now
I was the only boy.
You just play out. Oh, so you were always, like, the husband or the every time.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep. We didn't have any boys, so it was just teenagers. Okay, so the storm is brewing.
It's brewing.
And he happens upon a giant library. It seems like it's almost in the woods, kind of.
I know.
I can't tell, but apparently there were some shots that they got at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County.
Okay.
I don't know if it was interiors or exteriors. I don't know exactly, but apparently some of it was shot there. And so I'd have to go there to go see. Yeah.
Let's go.
I'm ready. And I also have to note, I don't know what it was about the style of Foley that is used in 80s and 90s movies, but there's this, like, crispness to the drips of rain on the floor, like off of his coat, and the squeak of his shoes.
Yes.
And the rolling of the cart that Mr. Dewey, the librarian, rolls in. Like, all the sounds are so, I don't know, visceral. Like, they feel so tactile, and, like, I don't know what it was about the style of Foley in the 90s, but I don't feel like movies feel that way today. And if not, it may just be the fact, or maybe they do, and maybe I've just lost the ability to, like, pay rapt attention to something like that and absorb the sounds in the same way. I really don't know. But I don't know. They're just perfect to me.
It's
and I feel that way about so many.
Mixed in way better now that everything's digital.
Probably.
Before it wasn't.
And it was very loud, and it wasn't mixed in, and so it didn't feel like life. It felt closer. But I associate that with movies in the 90s, which I associate with comfort and what feels more real. But like I said, here we meet the librarian, Mr. Dewey, and he doesn't allow Richie to, like, get a word in edgewise. He's just insisting that he has a talent for guessing what people need, and he's offering him stories from all these genres. And he makes them sound so thrilling and perfect.
I know.
And can I please walk into a ginormous library and have an incredible library and just guess the book that I need? That sounds so much
goodness.
Fun. That sounds like so much fun.
That's like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy of, like, the microwave that knows exactly what you're craving.
Speaking of this concept, so I have, like, a total tangent here. But have you ever been to the bar called the Collins in Birmingham?
Maybe. I don't think so, though.
So there's this bar in Birmingham, Alabama, and there's no menu, apparently. And I had been told by people that are local to Birmingham that you go inside and they tell you what you need. They just, like, make for you what you need.
I've been to a few bars there because I worked on a movie there, but I don't remember which bars I went to. It was
the
a lot
Collins
of, like,
has, like, a periodic table behind the bar of all Alabama things.
Then
it's cool.
Actually, yes, I have been there. But I just ordered a drink and they gave it to me. They didn't choose my drink.
Well, that's the thing. I hoped that it would be the way that they said, because I was like, that sounds so, like, nice, and something weirdly literary. Like, you come in and they just tell you what you need, and it just feels, I don't know. So I was excited about it.
Yeah.
But I went in and I wasn't helped. Like, nobody came over to help me, and so I finally, like, went over to the bar and, like, waited. And I asked if they had a menu, knowing that they didn't, hoping that this would start the process, you know?
Right.
It would trigger something. And instead, the girl that was behind the bar just said no to me.
No.
And then she just stared at me. And I was like,
Oh,
okay. I felt very uncomfortable at that point, and I just ordered a Collins. So
yeah, sure.
I had a Collins at the Collins, but they didn't tell me what I needed. It was kind of disappointing.
Yeah,
and on a more nostalgic note, it reminds me of Chubby's from Boy Meets World. Do you know, in the early seasons of Boy Meets World, they go to Chubby's to hang out.
Yeah,
and it's this sandwich shop, I guess, kind of, sort of. And there's a code, and you have to kind of know what to order or what to say. I remember there's a point when Corey's coaching this girl through ordering at Chubby's, and he tells her to order a turkey chubby with everything, and if he wipes his nose, you're in. There's this thing. I don't know. Something about that feels so cool. It feels very 90s to me.
You wish it was real. I wish it was real now.
It isn't, but yeah, that reminded me of that from Boy Meets World
what
too.
people need.
Yeah, it's just you're gonna get what you get.
All right.
And I think that's funny.
I have a quote here before you. I don't want to skip over what you're going to say.
No, go ahead.
But my favorite part of this, which resonated with me deeply, I felt like he was talking to me, is when he says, he's going through all the different genres of what he thinks he needs. He gets through his horror spiel of horror.
Yes. Graveyards.
Evil demons, wretched monsters, haunted houses, graveyards. Yes, it's horror for you, boy. I'm sure of it.
Oh.
And I'm pretty sure it's horror for me.
I like that stood out to you because I've thought of you.
Yeah.
Every time I've heard it as an adult.
It's horror for me. I'm sure of it.
It's horror for me as well. I'm sure of it. Of those genres.
Tell especially. That to all the first dates I go on.
It's horror.
They're horror? Check, please.
Please. He's an axe murderer.
Not really.
I can vouch that he at least hasn't axe murdered me in a few years, if that's helpful.
Anyway, it's horror for me, boy.
It's horror for you, boy. And it's horror for me, boy. And he gestures and says through there to tell them where to go. I've told you this before, but so many of my dreams as a child and now involve libraries.
Yeah.
So many. Yeah. Just long hallways, long corridors with shelves. It's not just hallways, usually.
Shelves of books.
Typically, if I'm going to dream about a hallway, it's shelves of books in a library.
Yeah.
I don't dream about plain hallways. And it's they're tall and they're towering and ominous, but it's also haunting, and it feels almost inviting. They want me to be there. I don't feel like I shouldn't be there.
Right.
It's strange, but I have dreamed about libraries for my whole life.
Sounds like Hill House.
It does. And it makes me wonder if it was related to this movie, because obviously I would have seen this very, very early.
Yeah, because he's wandering off and he's don't be afraid.
Mm-hmm. And then you're well, of what?
Right.
It begs questions. But we get to this rotunda, you look up, you see all of these literary classics painted on there. We've got just everything represented. Jekyll and Hyde, Captain Ahab. We've got Treasure Island.
Treasure Island, yeah.
And then
and a dragon.
A big old dragon, fantasy dragon. And then in the middle, we see this Merlin looking, magician looking man.
Yes.
And as he's looking up at the rotunda, he slips on the floor because it's wet from where he's dripping because he's just coming out of the rain. And he hits his head, kind of, we assume.
Yeah.
Then the rotunda begins to melt around him. A lot of kids were very frightened by this, apparently. I found that out in my research, looking it up. People were afraid of this moment. This did not scare me. I thought it was cool. But this is the CGI element.
I thought so. Because it's very cartoonish. Obviously, when I was watching it 2 days ago or yesterday or whenever, I was wow, really bad animation. But then
it is
when I realized what it was
cutting edge
doing,
CGI for the moment.
Well, yeah. But then, once I realized what it was doing, I was oh, yes, that makes sense. This is good.
And not only that, but you have the the paint that's dripping in CGI and Merlin's face gets all distorted. And I guess that could be scary, but that wasn't what scared me about this movie.
No, yeah.
But there's paint appearing on his clothes and pooling down on the floor. And it looked so real to me growing up. To come to find out, a lot of it was real, or at least some of it was real, because they were blurring this line between live action and CGI. But it kind of has an attitude about it. It falls like liquid does, and some of it was real for that reason. So you really believe it when it's pooling together and kind of swirls into this tsunami of paint and color.
Yeah.
And it chases him through the hallway and he can't get away. And eventually it swallows him up. And then suddenly everything is animated and we're in the animated part of the movie. And it was just very, it was unprecedented at the time. This stuff didn't happen. Now it's kind of old hat, but at the time,
right,
you'd never seen anything like this before. I was personally blown away.
This was the movie that inspired the other.
Yeah, it was really one of the first to do anything like this. It was a huge undertaking for them to even attempt it. And with that, I'll leave you all on a cliffhanger because that is the end of part 1 of our Pagemaster story.
And what perfect timing.
Next time we'll get into more of obviously the plot of the film and all that good stuff. There's always so much to say before getting into a movie night. There's just, there's so much to go over.
There really is. Yeah. I keep finding that over and over about all the background, everybody who made the stuff. It takes a lot of time.
By the time you talk through production and cast, you're already into it.
well into it.
But we do hope that you guys will, be into this series, and we think it's just a 2-parter, Hopefully we're not the only ones that are obsessed with the Pagemaster, so we'll see.
No, it's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, Pagemaster is it's a good one.
Yeah, it really is. Thanks for listening to this first half.
We appreciate you. Thanks for listening. We've been trying diligently to put out content for you, even though, our schedules have been crazy. So
right.
We appreciate you.
We're always hustling.
You, listener. It's all because of you.
Yeah. A little bit of us, too, though.
And us. But, yeah.
Mostly.
Mostly because I just want to talk about this.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you in a couple weeks.
Yeah. See ya. Bye.
Stay spooky. Thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark, written and produced by Christian Baxter Mott and Kaylin Andrews.
Our music is composed by Jonathan Simmons, and our art is provided by Paige Garland at Power Girl Illustration.
Join the collective nostalgia and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at That's Pretty Dark Podcast.
Share your experiences and let us know what shows, films, or villains still haunt you from childhood at that'sprettydarkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you're never really alone.
So, until next time, sweet dreams, everyone.